Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener-sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value-for-value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show.
Good morning. Welcome to the Road to Concord. Today is Tuesday, July 14th, 2026. I am your host, Joe Bakanovic, and it has been pointed out that Charlie and Natasha failed to do their job today. Yes, it's Joseph's coat, not Jacob's coat. God, I'm an idiot. I don't know why you study with me. I'm an idiot, especially when it comes to names.
I didn't notice that at all.
That's because you were too busy having fun with jocularity.
Yes,
In the
yes,
pre-show.
we were, yeah.
To quote Father McCahey, jocularity. Anyhow, I don't know if that can be fixed, but if it can, we'll get it fixed a little bit later on. I know it can be fixed on Rumble. I don't know about the other shows. Anyhow, Joseph's coat, dreams and enslavement, Judah and Tamar, if we can get to it. This is going to be, thank you, Sailor Sun, for pointing out that I'm a total moron. This is going to be a jam-packed show because that code is more important than most people realize. So, Genesis 37, verse 1. Now Jacob lived in the land where his father had sojourned, in the land of Canaan, or Canaan. These are the records of generations of Jacob. So that's going to be continuing on from that point forward. We're dealing with Jacob's children. So it's not just this chapter, it's all the chapters that are going to follow. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. So Joseph's a bit of a tattletale, I guess. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was a son of his old age. Now, at this point in time, I don't know whether or not Rachel has died. To read the storyline, she has. But remember, you might have nested chiasms here, so we might not be reading a literal, linear telling of this story. But at this point, Joseph more favored than Benjamin, I guess. Probably because he's the firstborn son of his favorite wife. But anyway. Jacob loves Joseph, and he made him a varicolored tunic, a coat of many colors. I don't know if you guys out there have ever studied this, know what the significance of that robe is, but this is a big deal. This right here is Bible Hub. What is Joseph's robe's significance? Cultural historical significance. In the Middle Bronze Age, approximately 1900 BC, consistent with Usher's chronology, multicolored garments were luxury items. In other words, Egyptian tomb number 3 at Ben Hassan depicts Semitic traders in striped, variegated tunics. These fresco corroborated the biblical portrait of Canaanite dress for persons of means, lavish dyes, Tyrrhenian purple, madder red, indigo. They demand specialized artisan and costly trade, restricting such robes to the elite. Okay, so first of all, we know that Jacob's wealthy. This is going to be a point of wealth. The legal implications, birthright, visualized right here. This is what's important. Ancient Near Eastern law codes, the Nuzi tablets, the 15th century BC, etc., show that special items, garments, statuettes, seals, could transfer inheritance. Joseph's robe signals legal transference, explaining why Reuben, the natural firstborn, is anxious to protect Joseph later in our story. He risks losing a double portion rights permanently if he doesn't. So we've got a cultural thing going on here that a lot of us probably are not aware of. It's in this scripture. That coat explains a lot of what's about to happen. So his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers. So they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Part of why they're going to hate him is because he has now been put above all of them. He has now been moved to the firstborn double inheritance rights. That's part of what that coat probably signals. Well, where do you get that from, Joe? Well, very easy. He is Jacob, the man Israel is going to put Joseph first ahead of all his brothers through Ephraim and Manasseh. So, verse 5. Then Joseph had a dream. Yes, sir?
Yeah, let me just jump in here just for a second.
Yeah,
because
please, by all means.
There is a little bit of conjecture with the translation here, because directly in the Hebrew, it just means a long sleeve tunic. Now they're saying that's this multicolored coat and stuff, which it very well could have been. But the point is, like you're pointing out here, is this was a symbol of, well, royalty, inheritance, and that kind of thing. That's the important part here. Whether it was, multicolored or just it was special, it was different, it was significant, and it was tied to this, birthright, inheritance, favor, and that kind of thing. That's the important thing to take away. But just so that
it's probably been translated as multicolored because if he'd have just given him another coat, that wouldn't have necessarily signaled anything. The fact that this coat signals what it does, indicates that it was probably one of these, a coat showing wealth.
Right. Yeah. I think it was. I mean, and it's
folks. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't say translators are wrong in this, because it's very likely that it was. It's just textually speaking, it doesn't say that. But if you look at it from the cultural perspective and such, that's very likely what it was and
what we're dealing with in this entire chapter. Just stay there, Charlie. This is typology.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another reason to think that this is a multicolored, very expensive coat or tunic. Joseph right here, this story with Joseph, this is typology of the Messiah. Okay, he's going to be stripped of his coat, thrown in a pit, symbolic of death.
Yep.
He's going to be sold for silver. He's not sold for 30 coins. He's sold for 20, but he's going to be sold for silver to non-believers, in a sense. So he's in a sense dead, but then he's going to rise again. He's going to come up out of the pit, go into Egypt.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the Messiah was stripped of a tunic that had no seams. Again,
right.
Wealth.
Right. Very wealthy. Right. Yes.
Okay. So, the Messiah is going to be sold silver and everything. This is typology. Also, what the book I'm still reading, Drew Johnson would call pixelations of the story. There's abstract concepts being taught here, a way of knowing, a way of understanding that the Greek logic cannot. This is nothing you can test, but this is firm knowledge to the believer, because this is showing you early what's going to happen later. Okay, and that's why we call it typology, and it's part of the proof that we can trust Yahweh. He will do what he promises he's going to do. And then, like a play, this is why we say history repeats. This typology is where it happens earlier in the play to get you ready for the main event when that happens. If you're following and making sense with that.
Right.
Anything else, Charlie?
Yeah, that's good.
All righty, let's keep on trucking. All right. So let me move my cursor. Joseph then had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had." Now, why would he do this? I think that Joseph loves his brothers, and we'll see that later as we continue into Genesis. He does love his brothers. I think he's kind of innocent of all this. You know, he's 17 years old. He's just kind of, hey, this is cool. Let me share it with my brothers. And some of those brothers are probably quite a few years older, grown men and everything, married, families. He's just a petulant little child here. I can see the human side of this. Now, this next section, he wants to tell his dream. Verse 7, I have it in blue because this is prophecy. It says, "For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf rose up also, stood erect, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf. Then his brothers said to him, are you actually going to reign over us? Are you really going to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words." All right, we've got to talk about this too. This goes hand in hand with the book study we're doing, the scepter and the birthright. Joseph is not of the tribe of Judah, so he's not going to have the scepter. So how is he going to rule over the other sons? Well, what's going to happen at first when they split the northern and the southern kingdom, the tribe of Joseph is put at the head of the northern kingdom, Israel. So he rules over those descendants, but he doesn't rule over Judah and Benjamin at that time. He will later. He will eventually come to rule over them in the land that Yahweh promises King David that his descendants will eventually be given, where they will never move again. They'll be permanently placed there. And it's not the Holy Land, it's a different land, never to be uprooted again. And that he will have a son that rules over the whole kingdom of Israel. Well, yeah, that's from the line of Judah. That's a scepter. You know, he'll always have a descendant ruling over Israel. But at that point in time, the birthright will belong to Joseph. And when the new covenant comes and we start going back to the order of Melchizedek and things like this, when you start going backwards, eventually all of that comes under the holder of the birthright. So when the whole world is restored, the end times, when the Messiah returns, Joseph's going to be more prominent than Judah, because you're going to be back under the way of doing things here now, where they're at in time here as we're reading this story. Jacob is going to be the head priest of their household, of their family. He's also going to be the lawgiver and the judge, because he is the head of their tribe now. Before that, it was Isaac, and before that, it was Abraham. So there's a lot going on here. So they hate him even more for his dream and his words. Verse 9. Now he had still another dream, and related it to his brothers, and said, Lo, I have had still another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. And he related it to his father and to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have had? Shall I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow ourselves down before you to the ground? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. Now, how did Jacob recognize the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me? How does Jacob get that they're all going to bow down to him? This is your mother and your brothers. So this suggests that Rachel might still be alive. We don't know. Not at this point, we don't know. So, folks, you have to understand this imagery here in blue. The sun, the moon, the 11 stars. In this case, the sun is Jacob, the moon is Rachel, the 11 stars are his brothers in this particular case. So this is why it's difficult to understand this in our way of thinking, because we know that Rachel died in childbirth, but the narration here doesn't tell us that Benjamin's been born yet. So this is a far prophecy, and it's symbolic, not literal, not necessarily literal. This is also depicting of the woman in the sky, clothed with the sun, with the moon, at her feet and the stars above her, but all this other stuff, or the moon above her head, all these other things. This is imagery of Israel. This imagery is in the seal of the United States of America. That the rays and the stars and the cloud and everything, those are actually the phases of the moon that looks like a cloud now to us. But that, when it was originally drawn, it's a depiction of Israel, and lifted up on the two eagles' wings. And Manasseh's with him because he's got the olive branch and the arrows. Those are the symbols of Manasseh. So what you have in the Great Seal of the United States is literally a depiction of the Northern Kingdom of Israel. That's all being foretold here. If you know what you're looking for and you take the time to trace it, you will find that the prophets talk about all of this. That's why I've been going through that book study on the scepter and the birthright with you. This is not a nothing burger. This is not somebody forcing square pegs into round holes. This is in your scriptures, and it can be traced in what we would call secular history. Every step of the way, it can be traced. Yes, sir.
Well, this shows that Israel understood the prophetic language, because
he's a prophet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. But I mean that's just showing that, because and it's consistent too, because you'll see that these images, if you look throughout scriptures, are always used consistently through the prophetic language. That's why it's different than just a regular language. There are different interpretations for things, but they are consistent throughout the throughout the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. So it's interesting that he immediately understands what he's saying here, and he doesn't discount it
in
either.
mind. No, he remembers.
He doesn't discount it. This is similar to Mary, and and Mary kept all these things in her heart, and and all that kind of stuff. They this is their way of thinking about this. And
plus, this, in where we've got this gloss in mind here, I'd have to go back and look at the Hebrew, but it probably says, but his father guarded the saying, not kept it in mind.
See, that's 11. Yeah.
Yeah, because
the
importance, if that's correct, that's more than just remembering it, folks. That's a prophet recognizing another prophet. So at this point, what this would tell.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. So at this point, Jacob knows that his son Joseph is a prophet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he might have known all along, which would be why he got the coat.
Right. And keeping this in mind, guarding this, is he's waiting to see exactly how this is going to be fulfilled. Yeah. And it's interesting to see, how this goes on, because, later on, when he is, deceived into thinking that Joseph's dead, where is he at then? That would mean, whatever happened to this prophecy that my son made,
which is why he wants to go down to Sheol.
That could have been a struggle for him.
His whole worldview
a serious
might have
struggle,
just been
right?
Shattered.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you got to think about this from their life perspectives too. This could have been quite a significant thing. And yeah, exactly. That may be why he was, it's like, hey, take me out. If this isn't going to happen, like, he said, then, am I trusting in Yahweh? What's going on here? So, yeah.
All right. We'll continue with the story now. Thanks, Rick. Whoops. That's not Rick. That's Charlie. I am just messing it all up today. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. We already know where that is. Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." And he said to him, "I will go." So Joseph says, "I'll go." Then he said to him, "Go now and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring word back to me." So he's sending Joseph as a messenger. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. A man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. Now, I can't help for what his brothers are about to call him. He's wandering here in the field. Sometimes I get the impression that young Joseph is a little bit of a dreamer, an airhead, not entirely here in this world, focusing on what he's supposed to be doing. And it says, and the man asked him, "What are you looking for?" And he said, "I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing the flock." And then the man said, "They have moved from here, for I've heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" And no, that's not the city in Alabama. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. Here's the plot against Joseph. When they saw him from a distance, before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer." Now, I think I'm reading this as a double entendre, which Hebrews love to do. He's the one who's had the dreams, and he's told them about the two dreams, but he's also possibly, he's wandering in the field, just kind of like, well, where are they? They might see that as a daydreamer. Okay. So it might have been in Joseph's nature at that point. And that might be a little bit why I told you early on, he's, well, hey, let me tell my brothers about my dream. It never occurs to him, to Joseph, that relating those dreams to his brothers might have the effect that it does. He doesn't. I get the idea that he's not entirely connected with the world at this age. Okay, we know from later parts of the story, he's a wise man. He's going to become very wise. But early on, his brothers seem to think, here comes this dreamer. "Now then, come and let us kill and throw him into one of the pits, and he will say, and we will say, 'A wild beast devoured him.' Then let us see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands and said, "Let us not take his life." More than likely, Reuben's motivation is material, selfish. Reuben further said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay hands on him, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him to his father." So Reuben's trying to rescue Joseph, who he knows his father loves, and give him back to his father to gain favor with his father. Because remember, Reuben's kind of on the outs for what he did with his father's wife. So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the varicolored tunic that was on him. And you'd have to look that up too in the Hebrew. That might just be the long-sleeved tunic. And they took him and threw him into the pit. Now, the pit was empty without any water in it. So if they leave him there too long, he's going to die. Then they sat down to eat a meal. Now, you're about to see probably not all of them. And as they raised their eyes and looked, behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing aromatic gum and balm and myrrh, on their way to bring them down to Egypt. Now, remember, Gilead is known for balms and stuff that can heal and soothe you. Judah says to his brothers, "What profit is it for us to kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." Now, I don't know if Judah is acting out of what he says here, doesn't want to kill his own flesh, or if he's wanting the money, or both. It says, "What profit is it?" Be careful about reading into that. That doesn't necessarily mean monetary gain. It could mean what spiritual profit, what moral profit is there. How's it going to help us to kill our own brother? We want to get rid of him, but how does that benefit us? Let's go ahead and just sell him into slavery. We're not told here. We don't know. And his brothers listened to him. Then some Midianite traders passed by. So they pulled him up and lifted Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Thus they brought Joseph into Egypt. Okay, we've got a problem here. The Ishmaelites and the Midianites are not the same people, but the text is mixing them. The Midianite traders are often referred to in the context of the Old Testament, this is Bible Hub, they played a significant role in the narrative of the Israelites. The Midianites were descendants of Midian, one of the sons of Abraham, through his wife Keturah, as recorded in Genesis 25, 1 and 2. This lineage places the Midianites within the broader Abrahamic family, yet their interactions with the Israelites were frequently marked by conflict and complexity. Remember, they're the group that Gideon has to fight. So why are the Midianites being called Ishmaelites? Well, if you'll remember, they all live in the same regions, the Arabian desert. They've intermarried. They're Arabs. They don't mix, but yet they intermarry. This is a mess, folks. And if you understand the Arab peoples, it's a mess. That's the point. They don't Arab. They don't play well with others. So they sell Joseph to these group of men. Now Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. So he tore his garments. All right. Well, Reuben must not have been eating with them, huh? So he might have left, and was hoping to rescue Joseph. He tears his garments. That's a sign of grief, mourning. He returned to his brothers and said, the boy is not there. As for me, where am I to go? So he's like, what am I going to do now? So they took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a male goat and dipped the tunic in the blood. And they sent the varicolored tunic and brought it to their father and said, we found this. Please examine it to see whether it's your son's tunic or not. So right here it says, we found this. They sent. More than likely, the brothers, the language, it says, we found this. Please examine it, see whether it's your son's tunic. I don't see the brothers speaking that way. So what did, the verse before it, they sent it to their father. They probably had some servants take that to Jacob. Then he examined it and said, it's my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. So Jacob tore his clothes, sign of mourning, and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. Then all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him. Earlier, people thought that, we were reading some of the commentary where it says Jacob only had one daughter. Well, this says daughters. The reason we don't know the names of the other daughters is because none of them were central to the story with Simeon and Levi. Okay, the one daughter was named because she's going to be important in the narration. So he's got more daughters than just this. And he might have more sons than just the 12 we know about. Might. We don't know. He arose to comfort him, but he can refuse to be comforted. And he said, surely I will go down to Sheol in mourning for my son. So his father wept for him. So that tells us, like what Charlie was talking about, Jacob is really distraught over all this. Because if Joseph dies before the prophecies have come true, is his faith been in vain? Has he worshiped the wrong God, or did he misunderstand? And has he somehow let Yahweh down? This would be greatly distressing for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites, again, not Ishmaelites again, now the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard. So that's how Joseph gets into Egypt. That's where we're going to stop right there for the moment. In the prophetic language, Egypt represents physical bondage and slavery, hard work. But you're not necessarily prohibited from worshiping Yahweh. In the prophetic language, the other exile into Babylon represents spiritual apostasy, deception and apostasy, spiritual adultery, unfaithfulness. So you don't necessarily will, but you can remain spiritually faithful while you're in physical bondage. But it's hard to remain spiritually faithful when you're in spiritual bondage. And how do we know that these are the two different ways of reading this? Well, in Egypt, we're told they end up eventually in physical bondage and slave labor. In Babylon, we're told that they're allowed to pretty much run their lives any way they want. But because of David, Daniel, rather, the book of Daniel, we are told that they have to worship Nebuchadnezzar's false idol god. And if they don't, they're thrown in the furnace. And there are very few willing to face death in Babylon over that. So you don't have the spiritual freedom when you're in Mystery Babylon, or you're in Babylon, rather. You have the physical freedom, but not necessarily the spiritual freedom. So these things are vice versa. You can be stuck in both. Okay, it's possible to get stuck in both. That's a really bad place to be. But this is where we're going to stop, take our break. When we come back, we're going to do the next chapter, chapter 38. I didn't know whether or not I'd get through all of that. Charlie, before we go to the break, did you have anything you want to add to where we're at with Joseph and the tunic and dreams?
No, this is, I think you're on track for everything so far. So, but
all right, we got through that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. 3-minute break, and we'll come back and we'll read about Judah and Tamar. This is also important, and it also goes directly to the book study we're doing. See you in 3. Charlie's dancing again. All right. Judah and Tamar. Now, there's a lot going on in this chapter too. So let's just get going. And it came about at that time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. Adulamite. This is a city within the Holy Lands. It's going to be part of the tribal lands. It's just, I looked it up. Judah saw there was a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went into her. Excuse me, just a second here. I apologize for that. So Judah is going to be, he's going to marry a Canaanite woman. It's not going to end up having any real consequence other than, in the lineages, other than it's going to force something that we're going to see later in this chapter. But intermarrying with the Canaanites is never good for Yahweh's people. So, and he took her and went, and this is, doesn't say anything about arranging to marry her. So leave you to figure out what that means. So she conceived and bore a son, and he named him Then she conceived again and bore a son, named him Onan. And she bore still another son and named him Shelah. And it was at Chezib that she bore him. Now, I don't know that the names are important to us here. I didn't bother looking them up, so my apologies if you're wondering about that. I'm focused more on what happens next. Now, Judah took a wife for his firstborn. So he goes and chooses the wife for him. Notice that you don't always have a say in who you marry in the biblical times. But usually, custom, the son would have had a hand in this. Son would have probably been the one who asked for this woman. And her name was Tamar. Now, I know we're assuming, but I've learned about the culture. It was probably going to be understood by the audience. But Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of Yahweh. So Yahweh took his life. Then Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her and raise up offspring for your brother. All right, this is where it gets complicated. This is going to be part of the law of Moses. But we have not been given that law yet in the Bible. This is the first point where we run into this. Now, there are people who think that the law of Moses has existed since Adam's day. And they'll say, well, look, later in the scriptures, it said Abraham obeyed everything Yahweh told him to do. So look, Abraham obeyed the law of Moses. That's not what that passage in the scripture says. It says that Abraham obeyed everything Yahweh told him to do. It doesn't mean Yahweh gave him the law of Moses. There are a lot of people who want to read into the scriptures that the law of Moses is eternal. But that's not the case. It can't be. Because if that's the case, then the author of Hebrews and Paul later in his letters have both lied to us. Where it says, with a change in the covenant comes a change in the Torah, the law. So I don't know what you want to make of that. If you're one of the ones who wants to read into the law of Moses is eternal, fine. I read the Torah of Yahweh is eternal. They are not the same thing. The law of Moses is part of Torah, but Torah is bigger than the law of Moses. It incorporates much more. So that's how I read it. More than likely what we have here is this is a custom of the region based on progenitate. You've got to preserve the line of the eldest son, et cetera, and the inheritance that goes with it. And you'll see that here in just a minute. When we continue reading, you'll see more signs, more hints that that's the thing. So what we're probably dealing here with is a cultural practice that was later made part of the law of Moses because it was part of the cultural, part of the way of doing things. It was part of how the society was organized. It was thought right. It was how society worked, that society. So it was codified because they lived in that time and culture. So you make it part of the law. That's my assumption. So, but pay attention to these things. They're important. So it says, go into your brother's wife and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother. Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So when he went into his brother's wife, he wasted his seed on the ground in order not to give offspring to his brother. Okay, there's a lot that can be inferred here too. How are they not going to be his? You know, he's the father, right? That's because in their culture, those offspring are going to be considered to be his brother's children, and they will have the inheritance rights of the brother. Well, if the brother doesn't have any children, then Onan's going to, as the second born, he's going to be the one that's going to acquire that. So what he does here essentially is a, you know, it's a crime against the family. But what he did was displeasing to the sight in the sight of Yahweh. So he took his life also. So Yahweh took his life. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought, I am afraid he too may die like his brothers. So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. By rights, she probably should have lived in Judah's house, but because she's supposed to be part of his family at this point in time. But we see that Judah doesn't want to give his youngest son to Tamar. So now, after a considerable time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. And when the time of the mourning was ended, Judah went up to the sheep shearers in Timnah, and he and his friend Hirah the Adullamite. All right, what's this got? You know, so he's going to go up to the sheep shearers. From what I've been able to ascertain, reading about the culture, this is usually a time of celebration. It's an excuse to throw a party. So not only it helps with the hard work of shearing the sheep, but it's also, hey, you know, I'm going to be making some money here now because we got wool. We can spin it and sell it and all of this stuff. And from what I've been able to ascertain, it was a time of revelry and drinking and other things like this, just like the time of winnowing. So Judah's probably looking to celebrate a little bit, cut loose, have a good time. It says, it was told to Tamar, behold, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she removed her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil and wrapped herself and sat in the gateway of Anaim, which is on the road to Timnah. So she laid a trap for him. For she saw that Shelah had grown up and she had not been given to him as a wife. So she doesn't even know this kid. He'd be a teenager. She'd be a lot older now. And it's all about function within society, your duty to society. It's not about your personal desires and gains in their world. You have, and this is the way even the Western world worked for many years. This idea of romance and individual picking everything and doing, you know, pursuing your life. The way we look at love and things nowadays is fairly a new occurrence in the whole world, let alone the Western world. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and this is a huge deal, especially for women in this culture. She was in effect barren because she had no husband, you know, and such. And so that, you know, in that culture, women in that situation were actually looked down on and kind of scorned,
Yes.
you know, because they weren't
Yes.
filling their role in society, you know, is the way it was looked at. And so that's why she did all this. You know, you got to see all this, you know, what's going on and all the social pressures and such that are going on. And that's why there were these rules, you know, laws, I don't know, you know, cultural laws at least.
Maintain an ordered functioning society.
Yeah, and that's what it was for, was to maintain order within the society and to maintain the inheritance rights and all those things that went along with that. So all these things are intertwined here and very important in their culture and society.
Yes. So when Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, here now, let me come into you. So he's negotiating the price with the working woman here, what he thinks is a working girl. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what will you give me that you may come into me? And he said, therefore, I will send you a young goat from the flock. She said, moreover, will you give me a pledge until you send it? Collateral. He said, what pledge shall I give you? And she said, your seal and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. And folks, these are not just little trinkets. These signify that he is the head of the household of Judah, the clan of Judah. So she's asking for a valuable piece of property. Yes, sir.
This is like asking somebody today for like their passport, driver's license, and things like that.
Social Security
that's kind
card.
of what. Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
what she's doing here.
Yeah. So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and departed and removed her veil and put on her widow's garment. Now, if, just as an aside, if you are of the school that believes that the law of Moses is eternal and it's been in place since Adam and is still in place now, Judah just sinned mightily. Now, he is in the wrong here culturally, but if he did this, then Judah's a sinner because he shouldn't have lain with his son's wife, and therefore the offspring here would be sinners, and the Messiah would come from a lineage born out of sin. This is another reason I do not believe that the law of Moses is in place at this point. Torah, yes. Law of Moses, no. Yes, sir.
You'll actually see if you pay attention to these chapters that we're going through now, many of the regulations, if you will, over these types of behaviors were codified within the law of Moses to kind of prevent these things from happening again, because you see there's negative effects that happen in society and things because of these incidents that have been documented already. And that's kind of the reasons they were codified, formally in the law of Moses, if you look at it from that perspective.
In a way, you can look at the law of Moses as case law. The 10 Commandments were the law, but people interpreted them a little too freely. So the case law, the law of Moses, comes along to narrow down the interpretation of what you are and are not allowed to do. So that's a way of looking at it. So when Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adulamite to receive the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. The Adulamite didn't. He asked the men of her place, saying, where is the temple prostitute who was by the road of Enaim? But they said, there has been no temple prostitute here. So he returned to Judah and said, I did not find her. And furthermore, the men of the place said, there has been no temple prostitute here. That should alarm them a little bit. Okay, Judah at any rate is like, well, then who the heck did I just do this with? Then Judah said, let her keep them, otherwise we will become a laughingstock. After all, I sent this young goat, but you did not find her. So, afraid of being embarrassed by all of this, he's just like, okay, well, what the heck? Now, it was about 3 months later that Judah was informed, your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the harlot, and behold, she is also with child by harlotry. So when it got to be to where she couldn't hide it, it became visible. Judah is told. And then Judah says, bring her out and let her be burned. Okay. If the law of Moses is in place, she should be stoned. Yes. That's what for adultery, you get stoned, not burned. This is probably a cultural practice of the time. So he's going to burn her. And also he doesn't ask for the man who did this. The law of Moses says you have to have both. It was while she was being brought out that she sent to her father-in-law saying, I am with child by the man whom these things belong. She sent her pledge. And she said, please examine and see whose signet ring and cords and staff are these. And Judah recognized them. He might have immediately gone, oops. And he said, she is more righteous than I, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not have relations with her again. So he doesn't kill her because he realizes that he was the one in the wrong. And what she was doing was, well, if you're not going to give me your son, then you're going to be the one who gives me my children. So in the process, what Tamar was doing in their culture, if I'm correct, if this is cultural, she didn't sin. She's doing the only thing she could to show the respect to her husband and gain children to continue his line and to take care of herself, because she needs children in their culture, especially male children, to help provide for her in later times. Now comes the chapter that still resounds through history today. It came about at the time she was giving birth that, behold, there were twins in her womb. Moreover, it took place while she was giving birth. One put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, this one came out first. So they're going to say this is the firstborn by that way of counting things. But it came about as he drew back his hand that, behold, his brother came out. Then she said, what a breach you have made for yourself. That is a prophetic utterance. And this is a lot like, this is a literal breach. It should hearken you back to Esau and Jacob. Only Jacob comes out holding on to his brother's heel, saying that, indicating, I will overtake my brother. In this case, the brother comes out before the one who stuck out his hand. He was named Perez. We'll get to that in a minute. Afterwards, his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and he was named Zerah. Zerah and their descendants never recognized that they were not the firstborn. They have always claimed right of firstborn. They have disputed whether or not Perez should have been the firstborn. Perez is the firstborn in the sense that he came out first. He was recognized as the firstborn by, Tamar and Judah and everybody else. Perez is the one through whom we're going to get the Messiah. But Zerah has always claimed birthright privileges and never conceded them. In the book we're studying, the Scepter and the Birthright, he's the son of the thread. If you go back in history far enough, you will run into a group of people who can be directly connected to the Israelites through history, secular history. They are Israelites. And they carry a banner of a red hand with a red string tied around the wrist. They are literally the descendants of Zerah, and they know it, and they call themselves that. And that is the bloodline that the princess that Jeremiah has with him marries into. That's the breach. That's the breach in the bloodline of Judah and David. But because the princess who comes from David marries into Zerah, some people say that's a breach. Some people say that's the curing of the breach, the repair of the breach. I don't know how you want to look at it. I don't know how we're supposed to look at it. I just know this, that no matter how you want to count it, a descendant of Judah has the scepter, and a descendant from the bloodlines of David holds that scepter through their mother Tamar. Not Tamar, Tefi, the princess with Jeremiah. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, none of this is in your scriptures. Oh, but it is. That's why the book we're reading is important. Brother Allen is not focusing on when does the Messiah return. He's focusing on what did the prophecies say about the different tribes of Israel in the latter days. He's focusing on pieces of prophecy that nobody today ever really wants to pay attention to. He realizes that the promise of the new covenant says that later men will hunt for you. And that's what he's doing, hunting for the lost tribes. They are not lost in the sense that you cannot physically find them. They are lost spiritually. They were given a divorce. They're spiritually dead. How do we know this? Well, if they were the lost tribes and nobody knew where to find him, why did the Messiah send his apostles out to the lost sheep of the house of Israel and expect them to be able to find them? Remember, he stayed back. He sent them out go but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's because everybody knew where they still were, knew who they were. They were lost spiritually. Now, these two names, Perez, I looked this up, and Charlie, if you want to bump in here, you can. But to the best of my understanding, Perez means a breach or an interruption or eruption or whatever, but basically a breach or a breaking forth. That might be another way of putting it in the Hebrew, breaking forth. And then Zerah means a dawn or a rising, like the rising of the light, the rising of the sun, dawn. I have also read that it can mean spreading. Now, I have not been able to find anybody who verifies that, but I can see the connotation, the rising light, the light spreads out over the land. I think that might be somebody trying to force that meaning into the word, the Hebrew word, because of what Zerah means, what he does prophetically. There are elements of the house of David with all of the house of Israel, no matter where they go. They have elements of the house of David and the lines from Judah with them wherever they go. Even the northern kingdom, when it's dispersed, if you'll read your Bible, we read it in Jeremiah, and it was mentioned by Alan in the book, The Scepter and the Birthright. Assyria took parts of the southern kingdom with the northern. They took part of the house of Judah and part of the Levites. So no matter where the house of Israel has gone, they have had the ruling family with them, or some member of Judah, and some bloodlines of Zerah and his descendants. So you've got somebody of the royal lineage from Judah that could conceivably be their king wherever they're going. So in this sense, when they spread out throughout the whole world, the rising of the light from the east, okay, because we're told Ephraim's going to push west, push west, push west. It could be, the sun comes from the east. The gospel's going to come from the east. When we see the Messiah, he'll be coming from the east. Even though you're heading west, what it could be an indication of is Yahweh's light comes from the east and heads west. And in their migrations, that's exactly what the northern kingdom does. It goes a little farther east than Jerusalem and then turns around and heads west. And they have always gone west ever since. There are small portions of them that went and got caught up into the nation of India that we would think of as India today, but it's not a big part. And they didn't do the work there that they've done in the Western world. So as you trace all of this through the Scepter and the Birthright, or through other books like the history of the Anglo-Celtic Israelites, or Collins' book, Lost Tribes Found, when you look at what has been available to us for decades now, a couple centuries now, when you look at the information available in what we would think of as the secular world, set the modern geography and nations aside. Look at the spiritual, and you will recognize that the United States is the seat of Ephraim. This land that we call the United States is the seat of Ephraim. So, folks, when the United States turns on Israel, that's Ephraim eating Judah. And when Israel turns on the United States, that's Judah eating Ephraim. That's not a good thing. It shows spiritual blindness on our part. We don't understand who we are. Charlie, I did it. 2 chapters.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, we actually made it through both of them. I'm surprised, but that went pretty well.
Those are big chapters.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Well, these chapters and what's about to come are very important. Like you said, and looking at our Friday classes, that this is important all the way till today, and probably up until the coming of the Messiah. So this stuff is important, and we're all the way back in Genesis. So like we said, if you don't understand Genesis, you don't understand the rest of the book. So
Yes.
that's why we're doing this.
And folks, Jeremiah says there's two houses. Isaiah says it. All of the prophets say it.
It's
the Messiah says it.
It's just, yeah.
As soon as you understand that there are two houses and that Israel is going to be moved to a different land where they'll never be moved again, if you have never known that and you first run across it, what does it do to your understanding of prophecy?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
You've got to start all over, which is what I've had to do in my lifetime, because I realized that everything I had been taught had to be wrong.
Yep.
And what I've come to understand in all of this is that it's about the kingdom. It's about Yahweh saying, I'm going to choose a people, I'm going to teach them my ways, and they are supposed to show the world the right way to do this. Not just through religious practices. How do you establish a world, a society, the way I want you to do it? Well, folks, up until 1776, there had only ever been one theocratic republic, constitutional republic on the face of the earth under Moses, the law of Moses.
Yeah, that's true.
Until we established our country. And it was Samuel Adams who said, today we start the experiment of Protestant theocracy, constitutional Republican theocracy. We were supposed to show the world how to do it. Now, show me anywhere in the world today that has not been influenced by that constitutional theocracy.
Yeah, and the thing is the interesting thing of Yahweh's kingdom and his story throughout, the Bible, is his people don't always do it right,
or even know what they're doing.
But if you look carefully at what happens and how things happen, you can see the consistency of Yahweh, even when his people are rebellious against him. And that's the important thing, is you see how consistent Yahweh is throughout everything, and dealing with his own people, even that, they screw up, he holds them accountable. And so, this is something you don't see when you look at the other nations around them. You don't see that consistency in the gods and other, cultures and stuff that are going on. So that's an interesting thing to focus on as you look at this stuff and how this comes together. The good, bad, and the ugly, it's all there. But it all serves Yahweh's purpose in his kingdom.
Okie dokie. Tomorrow, Worship Wednesday. Don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing.
We just finished. Yeah. What are we going to do?
I might give a bigger explanation of biblical philosophy and what I'm learning through it, if nothing else comes to mind. But I'll ask the Father and see if he gives me anything. And then Thursday, we are probably going to have a conspiracy theory Thursday.
Oh, yes, that's going to be.
I just don't know whether it's going to be called A Weekend at Mitch's or Schrodinger's Senator.
Yeah.
Our AI is having excited beep boops. And then Friday we'll be back in our book study. So I'm late to the game on this conspiracy theory. There are people who've been running with it for a while already.
Yeah.
Steve Case is even running with this one. So, and it's probably because I've got a serious case of the Dilligaf.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't curse, Ray.
Yeah, you did.
I cursed according to the Beatitudes, not according to the chiseled law.
Right. There you go.
All right, we're gonna get out of here. Yes, ma'am.
No, I was actually about to suggest, hey, we should probably go ahead and leave before we reconsider a dump button.
All right, we're gonna get out of here. Thank you for being here with us. Excuse me with my names. It is well known that me and names do not get along. I can't even remember my own name half the time, but everything else I usually have down pat. So if you'll forgive me with mixing names up, please. It's not gonna end. It's been with me for 60 years. I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. So my apologies. It's a broken brain. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate the time you spend with us. We hope that we're helping you. We're, if nothing else, encouraging you to go back and check out. Those guys got to be wrong. If it gets you to read your Bible, praise Yahweh. To the extent that we get all of this right, praise the Father, all glory and honor to him and his Son. To the extent we get it wrong, you blame me. It's me, because I'm the one running his mouth. If you think I've done something that I need to look at or correct, please email me, show me what it is, show me the scriptures. I will do that. So otherwise, hit the like buttons, share the show if you feel led to do so. You know, if you want to help us keep the lights on around here, you can still go go to the donate button. All we ask is, if we got everybody that watched us to just buy us that $5 cup of coffee every month, to sign up for $5 a month, good gosh, we'd be a lot better off. It'd be easier to run the place and to get some other things done, because you guys keep the lights on, not us. And we thank you for it. Praise Yahweh for you. So, otherwise, I know that I'm an acquired taste. If you ever share the show with somebody, make sure you tell them, warn them about me. And until we see you again, y'all stay safe. Take care. We love you. Bye-bye.